Good morning, everybody. I'm David Hillyard from Cheltenham Bournside School at Sixth Form Centre. We're based in Cheltenham. We're the largest school in Gloucestershire, or very soon will be. We'll be up to 2,000 students very shortly. And it's not an understatement to say that technology is changing our school. And right at the centre of that is Frog. I'm going to see if I'm a digital native. There's a green button and a red button here. And I've not used this before, but I'm going to chance that it's the green one and see what happens. People say to me that Frog isn't relevant anymore. They say that you can get other tools that do similar things, often in a better way. And my very clear view is that Frog has never been more relevant today, actually. And it's just that quite often we don't realise what it is that we're trying to achieve, or we don't know what Frog is capable of achieving, and we go off looking for other things to solve the problems that we've got. So I'm going to share with you a few things that we're doing at our school. None of it is rocket science. I've been to every single Frog conference, and I've been engaged in singing and all sorts of things at various events over the years. And those of you that have joined me on that journey will know what I'm talking about. There's no gimmicks from me. There's no fancy videos. You'll get those from other people later today. For me, it's just some honest views of what Frog can do and how Frog can make an impact and a difference in our school, and then hopefully in your school too. The other thing that people say to me is that Frog costs me money. Yes, it does, of course. Frog does have to be a business. But my question back is, why aren't you getting your value for money? And I think Frog is real value for money. And it's just about, as I said, harnessing its potential and getting the most out of it. And so let me share a few things with you today. I don't think we can dispute these are the challenges that teachers are facing up and down the land. And some of the things that Gareth was saying are resonating with me and my experience in my own school, and then the schools that I also talk to. And I'm going to touch on each of these as I show you a couple of Frog sites that we've got and how we're addressing some of those real challenges that we're facing with Frog. And so here's a typical site from a geography lesson. I'm going to show you a geography site, I'm going to show you a science site. Not because they're whiz-bang, but because they make a difference. And for me, with Frog, the big things often make a small difference. And it's the small things in Frog that make the big difference. And so it's a lot of those small things that I want to share with you this morning. So here's a typical site from a geography lesson, and it's all about the relationship between China and Africa and the influence that China has in Africa and the trade relations between the two countries. And the question that we're trying to answer is that relationship beneficial to Africa? That's the central question, if you like, and all the activities that the students do point in that direction. So what we've got is a typical start to the lesson. We've got 4 sources, 2 pictures, 2 PDF documents that the students can come in and they can get going with straight away. What is this lesson going to be about? What is this going to, what am I going to be exploring today? What do these pictures tell me? And then for those that are working at a higher level, they can look at some of those PDF documents and they can investigate the relationship in more detail independently. But the important thing with this is it's a self-starting lesson. So once students are in a habit of using Frog and they come in and they know where their resources are, they can get going straight away with it. And so our lessons at Bournside are self-starting. We call it engagement on entry. As soon as they come in, they should be engaged right from the off. You're always going to get those students that come in late from PE. We've got a very big site, as you can imagine, with close to 2,000 students, and therefore, some students are a little bit later to lessons than others, depending on where their previous lesson was. So it's important for us that lessons are self-starting and they can get going straight away. And Frog enables us to do that. You can do it in other ways, for sure. But the beauty with Frog is that the teacher has planned this lesson up once, and then they can use it as many times as they like with as many classes as they like, without having to be there early themselves and put all the resources out on the tables and get the books out and get textbooks out and put worksheets out and do all those other things. So Frog for us enables self-starting lessons. Now, what the geography teacher then wants to do is enable the students to use the Global Investment Tracker, which is a website, to see where in Africa China is in making investments. And this is a website, but it has a horrible URL. And until we really got to grips with Frog as a school, what I'd do is I'd walk into lessons and I'd see on the board, on a PowerPoint slide, this enormous URL that a teacher is expecting a child to sort of look and type, and it just doesn't happen, as you can imagine. And it's not at all slick. And so a very small difference is that just by using the external link widget, you're taking that pain away from the students straight away. And that just increases the pace, and it enables you to focus on the challenge, which is, of course, what we're aiming to do. Now, in all my examples that I'm going to show you here, you'll notice that I'm only really using 3 widgets. Actually 4 a little bit later, I'll come on to that, but 3 widgets. And if you want to make a difference in teaching and learning without all the special things, thank you, then all you need is 3 widgets, really. And I've been guilty of training my staff on everything that Frog can do, doing endless training sessions, showing them the capabilities and everything. And I've been inspired over the years at the Frog conferences, where I've sat where you are, and I've watched Graham Quince and others demonstrate loads of weird and wonderful things, and thought, yeah, let's do that, we could do that too. Gone back to my school, started to put some things in place, and very quickly lost my teachers. And what I've done is I've brought it right back to the ground level. And I said, do you know what, to have an impact in your classroom, all you need is 3 things. You need a text widget, you need a file drop widget, you need an external link widget. That's all you need. If you use those, you will make an impact in your classroom. And that's what we're focusing on. And we'll worry about all the fancy bits a little bit later on down the line. So the next part of the lesson is that the teacher wants the child to have a map of Africa and to label that map to indicate where these countries are that they've just been looking at in the Global Investment Tracker, to try and sort of pinpoint, where in this continent are these things happening. And it leads to the investigation of where are all the precious minerals in this continent, and oh look, there happens to be a little bit of a correlation between where all the precious minerals are and then where China are having an influence in Africa. And this is getting towards the central question that they're trying to answer. But you know what it's like when you say to children, go and get a map of Africa, and they go straight to Google, and what they get is not what you want, and it's kind of taken away the central theme of the activity. So what are the other options? Draw the map in your book. Yeah, but you're not going to do that because you'll drain all the pace out of your lesson. So you're not going to trace it and do things like that. Okay, well, let's give it to them in a worksheet. Okay, we'll give it to them in a worksheet, that's fine, but I have to go and photocopy that worksheet, I have to hand out that worksheet, and then I've got all the logistics with it. So with Frog, what we do is put the image onto the site, and then there's no argument and ambiguity. You use that picture in your work. And we're a bring your own device school. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. But what the students can do with this in Frog is just hold their finger down on that picture, and on an iOS device it pops up save picture, saves it into their photo library, and then they can use that asset in anything that they choose. So it could be explain everything, it could be PowerPoint, it could be Word, it could be anything they like. But they've got the asset that the teacher wanted them to use in their lesson. And then the lesson moves on and they have to investigate about these natural resources and the impacts that China's involvement are having in Africa. And this is a much higher level task, as you can imagine. And some of these websites are sort of differentiated in terms of some of the thinking skills that would be required in order to understand what's going on. But again, this is a situation where in the past it would have been 10 URLs on the board, or it would have been handed out in a worksheet, and it's just not very easy to share a load of websites with students. But Frog just takes the pain away. It's just so straightforward. And then the final part of the lesson is that the teacher wants to do some kind of card sorting exercise. So here are 24 impacts of the relationship between China and Africa. And what I want you to do is decide which are the most significant, which ones are positive, which ones are negative. You can see the differentiation in there. And have a group discussion about it, come to a reasoned, rational thought. Ultimately, answer the question, do you think that China investing in Africa is positive? So in the past, what would you have done? You'd have prepared all this, possibly in Word. You'd have gone to the photocopier, you'd have printed out, 20 sets of it. You'd have then guillotined it all up, then you'd have handed them all out. I wouldn't have done, because I can't be bothered with all that. But my colleagues, who like these inspiring ways of teaching and learning, would have done that. And they'd have handed them all out. The kids would have done this activity. The activity itself probably wouldn't have taken more than 10 minutes, but it took them about 40 minutes to plan it at least. And then you've got the nightmare of collecting all these bits of paper back in, because you want to do the same activity with the next class that you've got in a few lessons' time. And of course you don't get all the little bits of paper back, because some of them are on the floor, some of them are screwed up, some of them have got graffiti on, and it just isn't going to happen. So with Frog, it's a simple picture. Now what we did here is just create a table in PowerPoint, actually. And with PowerPoint, you can right-click on the table, you can right-click on anything in PowerPoint and say, save as picture. Save as a picture, upload it into Frog. Now it's just a digital asset that the students can use. So they hold their finger down on the picture, save picture as, goes into their image gallery, and of course if you're on a Windows platform, it'll be a little bit different, but it's the same principle. And then they can use that asset then in any piece of work that they like, whether it's back into PowerPoint or it's into Word or into an Explain Everything or whatever it happens to be. Now, because they're not individual cards, which they could have been, but that would have been a bit of a faff, because it's just one great big table, you have to approach a task slightly differently. So instead of it being something that they move around the table, what they do now is gather around the tablet device in their small groups, and they use electronic highlighters on Explain Everything, for example, to highlight in green the things they think are positive, red the things that they think are negative, and then they just simply number the cards 1 to 24, which is their order of priority. So it's the same activity, but what we've done is taken all the logistics out of it to actually focus on the learning and the challenge, which was what was really important there. So that's a simple example of how Frog can make a real difference to teaching and learning in our school with 3 simple widgets and no gimmicks. So how does this relate back to the challenges then? So financial pressures, no photocopying of the worksheets. That's a massive thing. Our photocopying bill just goes up and up and up. And I'm on a relentless drive to bring it down and down and down. And it's not easy, but Frog makes that possible. Teacher recruitment and retention. Well, for me, this is partly about saving time. And so if you get that culture in your school and in your departments where we don't all have to reinvent the wheel, we don't need every single teacher planning exactly the same lesson. Why don't we do that collaboratively? Why don't we distribute the leadership a little bit so that one teacher is responsible for that lesson on China trading in Africa, and they put that together in Frog, and then all our colleagues in geography can all use the same lesson. And if that lesson isn't good enough, then we can use our department meetings to discuss it and think about how we can make that better, and we can make that change in Frog that everybody then benefits from when we want to deliver that lesson in the future. That gives everyone a better work-life balance because of the distributed leadership. But it also increases collaboration and a shared pedagogy, a shared understanding of how you want to teach and learn in a department. And that I find quite empowering, and it means that I have an increased morale because I feel part of the team. I feel like if I get my lesson observed and it's not good enough, it's not because my lesson wasn't good enough, it's because my team's planning wasn't good enough. And I just feel an increased sense of morale because we're working together. And the spotlight isn't on me, it's on us. And we do everything to try and make the lessons better and better and better. And today I'm then not embarrassed in sharing with you that typical geography lesson. There's curriculum change. We're undergoing a huge amount of change in education at the moment. I feel that a lot. I actually teach computer science and IT is my main subject. And so for me, there hasn't been a time of bigger change really, as we scrapped IT completely in favour of computer science. And we're changing the specifications and the courses every year. But I'm not alone in that, and I know that affects you guys too. But I see this as a positive, and maybe it's just because my glass is always half full, but I just see this as an opportunity for reflection. I think too many times our teachers just do the same thing again and again and again because they don't have the work-life balance, because they don't have the morale, because they don't have enough time. And so Frog can liberate those things and give you time for reflection, and you can actually think about this curriculum change in a positive way and say, right, this is a real opportunity for us to do things differently. How could we make this better for our learners? And then accountability, which I touched on a moment ago. If you've got consistency, because you've got collaboration in lesson planning, then everyone's accountable for those resources, and it just feels better. But better than that, you can support cover teachers and non-specialists. I'm not a geography teacher. I'm pretty confident I can go and teach that lesson just by spending half an hour reading what was intended from those very brief student-based lesson plans, the resources that are available on there. There's no additional preparation for me. I reckon I can teach that lesson no problem at all. I've had to have cover for my students today to come here, and my students are doing exactly the same lesson back at Bournside that they would have had if I was there. In fact, in many ways, I'm making myself redundant through all this technology, because I create little video clips from my lessons. They watch those for homework in advance of the lesson. They come into the lesson, they get on with activities immediately. All those activities are in Frog. They don't need me, actually, and many of them communicate with me completely outside of the lessons. And therefore, the cover teacher is completely supported, my head of department is completely supported, and my students, which is who it matters most to, are completely supported because they get the same lesson that they would have got whether I'm there or not. And I think that's fantastic. I hate thinking, oh no, I'm out tomorrow, what am I going to get year 7s to do? Oh, I don't know. Oh dear, that would be too difficult. No, let's do a poster. I hate that. And then we've got this forward march of technology. So we're very much at Bournside about harnessing mobile technology. And I know this polarises people. I know that some schools absolutely hate the thought of mobile phones in their school and ban them, and then there are others like Bournside that embrace it. And we do that because we see that as the only future that could possibly exist. We don't see a world where technology is going to go away. We see it increasing and increasing and increasing. And 50 years ago, it might have been unusual for them to have a pocket calculator. And it feels a bit unusual at the moment for them to have a tablet computer. Well, times are changing, and I think in 10, 15 years' time, who knows how long, that's an arbitrary figure, every child will have a device, if they haven't got one already, called their mobile phone, that will enable them to access digital resources, and they will expect to teach and learn in a very different way. And that's our responsibility, I think, to prepare them for that world that they're going to go into, not a world that we wrap them up in cotton wool and pretend doesn't exist. That's my view anyway. It comes with massive challenges, don't get me wrong, but those are challenges that we should embrace. So if we harness mobile technology, students are self-starting and independent, and it goes to extremes sometimes, because some of my best students come to my lesson and they've already done the lesson. And this is a little bit infuriating, and I might need to look at some of my rules and bits and pieces to prevent them doing all the work before they arrive. But perhaps that should be seen as a positive thing. So they truly have this anytime, anywhere learning, and increased parental engagement as well, because the parents have got access to all their students' work and all my plans and everything that's going on there because it's in Frog. But I've got ownership of that, and I can choose what I share with them, how and when. So for me, it's about increasing standards and reducing costs. It really is as simple as that. Let's have a quick look at a traditional science lesson then. So a teacher explains and demonstrates at the front of the class how to look at a plant and an animal cell under a microscope and draw what they see. They use a textbook to find out the purpose of the internal structures of a cell. They label an image of a plant and animal cell. They read about Euglena in a textbook and they make a decision, is this a plant or an animal cell, and they write a conclusion. It's a very straightforward and traditional lesson. And all Frog does with this is empower it to learn in a different way. I'm not changing the activities here particularly, okay? So in Frog, look at a plant and animal cell under a microscope, draw what you see, but it's self-starting, and I've got a couple of extra images on there that I can then use as a teacher in order to facilitate some discussions and some bits and pieces, and I'm not having to worry about, is this on page 89 of that textbook? Everything I need is there without me doing any additional planning. I've then got a little video clip that they can watch independently, and I don't necessarily have to grab them to the front and sort of watch it together. I can do that if I choose to, or they can watch that individually on their device, or they can watch it in advance of the lesson at home. So there's a fourth widget, so I lied slightly. Then they use the iCell app to investigate the structure of these cells in 3 dimensions. It just brings those textbooks alive, and the future of textbooks is online textbooks with animations, videos. In fact, the future is here already, let's face it. It's just most of our teachers aren't there yet. Then they use Explain Everything, which is an animation app to explain the difference between plants and animal cells. So instead of writing and drawing in their exercise book, which I think is a bit boring, they use technology to create an animation. It's the same lesson, it's just more exciting. Then they have to do a little bit of research to find out if Euglena is a plant or an animal cell, and they gather some evidence for that. They use DD Prompter to write a script, and they use iMovie to film in pairs a news report about the discovery of this new organism and its classification in biology. This is where I think the exciting stuff will come. Then I've got this new little widget, which at some point will be available on the Frog store. This is an idea that I had where I wanted to get the opinions of students. And I want the future of Frog to be a little bit more interactive and have some classroom tools that we can use, not just for sharing files and sharing text and sharing videos and sharing images, but to increase activity that you can inside Frog. So the opinion line enables them to come up, they can click the little plus icon, it gives them one of these little pointers that they can then drag across that opinion line, whether they think it's a plant or they think it's an animal or somewhere in the middle, or they can have an opinion. It will label that with their name, and then it enables me to have a class discussion with them and pick them out and talk to them about their thoughts. And so that's an exciting look into how the Frog store might work for us in the future. I've got an idea, I want to gather the opinions from my students. How can I do that in Frog without a wall widget, because I want it to be more visual? Let's put that up as an idea. Someone else has made me a widget, I've downloaded it onto my platform and I'm now using it. So I'm aware of Frog code, but I haven't written the code, and that I think is incredibly powerful. So the integration of Frog with tablet technology has the potential to transform learning, in my opinion. For me, it's about enhancing learning by taking advantage of new opportunities that only technology will provide. It's about engaging learners. They are these digital natives that Gareth was talking about. They expect to be able to use technology. They use it for communication, they use it for entertainment. They should be using it for education, right? They don't want to be reading in textbooks anymore. They live in this here and now world where they've got YouTube and these things that they just want in their face immediately, audio and visual, and they only want to watch it for 5 minutes. And technology enables you to do that. And then for me, this is perhaps the most important thing. It enables a personalised curriculum. It enables students to have student-led learning, personalised learning at their own pace. And I've given up standing at the front of the class and teaching. I don't do any chalk and talk anymore, because everything I need's on Frog. They come in, they get on with the lessons, and my first action is to immediately go to those students that I think are going to need a little bit of challenge first, to make sure that they're not just treading water, that they're actually engaging with the higher order thinking skills. Then I might go and see the students that I think are going to struggle a little bit and ensure that the scaffolding and differentiation is there for them. But most importantly, because I'm not spending 20 minutes at the front talking to them, I'm immediately talking to individual students and making an impact for them straight away. And Frog really helps me do that. So, facilitating communication and collaboration with stakeholders, saving money by making everyone more productive, saving money by reducing photocopying consumables, and saving money by not investing in tools that duplicate the functionality of Frog is where I am. And here's a little analogy for you. So I see Frog as this multi-tool, or the other option is that you could buy a bottle opener, a pair of scissors, and a knife. And this is the conversation that's happening in schools at the moment. Do we ditch Frog for individual tools that do these things, or not? And that's a big thing. And I think it's pretty obvious, even from my illustration, that if you go down the route of individual tools, then sure, each one of those individual tools has the functionality that you probably need. It probably does its job extremely well. But what you lose is the integration, and you lose everything that pulls all these components back together. And that would be something that I'd be very frightened of losing. I want to just very quickly show you some other impacts in our schools. So I focus primarily on teaching and learning, but for us, that wasn't the starting point. For us, that's the end point, really. Maybe it shouldn't have been. Maybe it should be that teaching and learning is the starting point. But if I'm honest with you, it was really about making our school more efficient from an administration perspective. So I'm just going to share with you a whole load of things very quickly that we do at our school in terms of increasing our efficiency and productivity. And I think I'm probably preaching to the converted, because I suspect a lot of you do these things already, and I'm always inspired by some of the things that I hear at the Frog Conference and when I get out of school and how you're using Frog. So I do apologise, some of these ideas I probably nicked from you back in the past, but let me just put them back out to you. So Bournside Brilliance is a site where we want our parents to tell us the things that the kids are engaged in outside of school. If they've just gone and got a black belt in karate, or they've gone and helped in the local community, in building something in the local parish, we want to know about this so that our head teacher can share that news with everybody else and put it into the newsletters and the bulletins, share it on our website and our local community. So parents can fill in this form and tell us about their child's achievements, and then the head teacher meets with those children without an actual physical conversation between the parent and a tutor, or the parent and the head teacher having taken place. We've taken all the permissions off this site, so it's really easy for a parent. They don't have to worry about logging into Frog and doing all those things. But we also have, and you can't see it because it's on the bottom of this page, we've got a file drop widget that the parents, if they then want to log in, they can log in and they can upload photos. And so we can get photos of the things their children have been doing out in the community, we can put on our own newsletter. Frog makes that really simple. All our application forms are done online, so all 6 form applications have to come through Frog, and that has just, completely changed the amount of time that we're spending on administration. Our whole options system is entirely in Frog, and our Year 9s can investigate all the subjects, they can then choose all their options that they want to pick, and critically, the people that then build the timetable can get that data out of Frog and import it into Sims very easily. And that just takes all the logistics of paper forms and everything else out of the way. And I know a lot of you do this already. We've got sites for things like trips and visits. So when we've got teachers that want to plan an educational visit, there are a number of protocols and procedures and forms and things that they need to go through. And we've got everything up on the site. I think one of the big differences between Frog and, say, public documents is with Frog, you can put context around files, whereas on shared drives, all you've got is a set of files. And so being able to combine the text with files, with forms and all sorts of things all in one place on one site just makes it so much easier. So everything in terms of trips and visits, whether you want to know about insurance, whether you want to propose a trip, whether you want to have emergency contact details if you're out in the field, whatever it happens to be, everything you need to know about organising a trip at Bournside School is there on that site. We've also got important documents for staff. So every year we have to sign to say that we've read the safeguarding policy, and if there are any other important updates to policies and documents, we're basically signing to say we've acknowledged we've read them. Frog makes that so much easier because we've done away with all the paper. So what we do now is we just save those policies as PDFs, upload them into Frog, and we're using a form with one simple tick box to say, I confirm I've read the following documents, child protection policy, tick, confirm. Put that on the dashboard of your staff Frog page, and it's easy, you can do it every year. And the person that's administering that can see very easily from the export who signed it, who hasn't signed it, and because I haven't even asked for the name of the person there, because Frog collects that data for you automatically anyway. And so that has just made something that it's not a big job, but it just makes it so much easier. Learning walks and observations. So all our observations are done through Frog. So what will happen is a teacher will go into a classroom, they'll fill out that form kind of there and then really in terms of collecting information about observations. But the beauty of this is that all our senior leaders get that data instantly. So if our head teacher wants to know what's the outcomes from the observations that we've done today, all he needs to do is go to this site, go to the data viewer, export the data, bang, there it is. He can get it in the evening without having any communication with anybody. And that's very empowering. Every year we do pastoral surveys with our children. So every year we ask the opinions of our children about our school. So we've got a form that we've set up years ago in Frog that we then use every single year. And I just use rules to make it visible to certain year groups at certain times of the year. It's really simple for me to do, and I don't have to involve the heads of year or the tutors in that process. It just happens for them behind the scenes. What also happens for them behind the scenes is a horrible Frog export file. I'm sure you've seen these out of the forms. But what I've done here is, because this is something that we use regularly, I've just created additional tabs on this spreadsheet. So it takes the import dump and converts it into that. And then I just copy and paste that into a PowerPoint slide and email it off to the head of year. And they then have the data that they want in a visual way. But better than that, you can't read that from where you're sat, but that would identify that a small number of students are not happy at school, or that they feel bullying is a big issue, for example. Now, to the students, that questionnaire was anonymous. It never asked for their name. But Frog collects their name automatically because of their username. And so we're able to identify who those children are, and we can make a decision, a strategic decision, about how we should intervene with those particular students. So that is a very simple use of Frog, and it has hidden power that is unseen by people that don't really use Frog. So I've skimmed the surface today, really. I haven't talked about Curriculum Designer. I haven't talked about Frog Snap. I haven't talked about progress. I haven't talked about assignments. I haven't talked about play. I haven't talked about feedback. I haven't talked about timelines. I've scratched the surface of what Frog can do, to be honest. I focused a little bit on Frog Learn there. The power of this tool is absolutely enormous. So I've got a little bit of a challenge, I guess, for you. Lucy said to me, that's a great presentation, Dave, but people need takeaways. Can you give them 5 takeaways, okay, from this? And so here are my 5 takeaways. I think number 1 is you have to know what Frog can do. This is hard. I mean, I've been using Frog, for a long, long time now, and I have to admit there are areas of Frog that are still a dark art for me, and I still every day learn something new about Frog. So I think that's the first thing. You need to know what Frog can do so that you can make some sound strategic decisions. Do you want one app or do you want lots of apps? You can't make that sensible decision unless you know what Frog can do for you. Do you want other IT systems duplicating Frog's functionality or not? There's a lot of grey area now where different apps will do very similar things. You know, we've gone on the days where they're poles apart, now they're merging together. And where that big grey area in the middle, you have to decide, do I want Frog to do this, or do I want something else to do this? And you need to make some sound strategic decisions about which tool you're using and why. But I don't think you can do that unless you have a good knowledge of what Frog can do, and I'm learning as well. I think, secondly then, you have to identify where you can make that impact. So what is it in your school improvement plan that Frog can actually make a difference with? Is it about communication in your school? Is that an issue? Is it about administrative efficiency? Is that an issue? Is it about the quality of teaching and learning? Is that an issue? And everything that that encompasses, whether it's homework, differentiation, student-led learning, whatever, okay? Are those the issues? And so you have to identify what it is that you want Frog to do for you once you know what Frog can do. And I think that success, true success, can only be achieved if you've got someone driving this. You can't just stick Frog in the school and expect it organically just to grow and look after itself. It does need driving. It doesn't have to be a school leader at the very top. That just makes it a bit easier in actual fact. But if you've got someone that's passionate about Frog in your school that can drive it forward and show other people the benefits, that's the critical thing, show other people how it can change their lives, then you're on to a winner. But do it one step at a time. As Gareth said, you can't go from A to Z, you've got to go from A to B. And once you're at B, then work out whether you want to go to C or D and then how you're going to get there. So you've got to learn how Frog can help you achieve your objectives. Now, Frog's functionality is changing all the time. Have you looked at assignments? Have you looked at play? Have you looked at progress? Have you looked at feedback? We haven't looked at all of those things. There's still a lot more for us to achieve. So I need to continue my process of learning what Frog can do for me. And with every new release comes new features. I'm already excited about DaVinci. I mean, Austin's old news now, isn't it? And so, I'm already excited about what's DaVinci going to do for me. And every time something new comes along, I have to reevaluate, right, now what can it do? Now what are my objectives? How can Frog enable me to join the school improvement plan to Frog's objectives? And then set yourself a goal. This isn't rocket science, is it? Have specific and measurable objectives with tangible outcomes. Know that it's making a difference, is what I would say. We can't just assume, oh, we've got Frog, therefore it must be making a difference. Oh, I've got Frog, I must be saving money. If that's your objective, then prove it. So consider your strategic vision. Think about the culture in your school. Think about who in your school can actually make a difference. And if it's not the head teacher, then don't go there. Okay? But who can actually make the difference? Who's got influence? Who can make these things happen for you? What CPD would you need in order to make this effective? And CPD isn't one of those things that you can just do once and fire and forget. You have to do it over and over and over and over again. And it is a bit frustrating, if I'm honest. I've done endless training on how to build sites in Frog, and then I have to do endless training on how to build sites in Frog. And then I have to do endless training in how to build sites in Frog. And the mistake that I made is I just show them too much too soon. Keep it simple. Show them how to build a site. Show them how to get a bit of text on there, a picture on there, and a file drop and stop. And then build at their pace, rather than the pace that you think that the whole school could go at. And then measure your success against this goal. So this is a cycle, okay? It's something that needs to just continually happen in the school if you're going to be successful. So that's my takeaway for today. Know what Frog can do, identify what your objectives are, learn how Frog can help you, set yourself a goal, measure those achievements, and then know what Frog can do for you again, and just keep going and going and going. And never end, because that will never end as long as I'm in teaching, I'm sure. Thank you very much for your time.